Hello again, and welcome to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. Thank you, as always, for joining us. As I speak, Bradley Byrne is on his way to the office. Bradley is a former U.S. representative from Alabama, represented the 1st Congressional District. I'll tell you a little bit more about his background. I feel like I've heard Bradley say that he couldn't be elected as a Republican today. And I want to hear why and what he feels has changed in the political spectrum that would make him unelectable. As we do this, today is November the 5th, and across the nation there were major elections. And according to the news sources that I've looked at earlier today, the Democratic Party really made some gains. And we'll talk a little bit to Bradley about that, even to the point of the Democrats' gains, an acknowledged socialist winning in New York City. New York is by no means a normal place for most of us, but that's a big, dramatic thing. Expressing, I think, dissatisfaction with the world today, with politics today, with the way people are being represented. Again, we'll hear Bradley's comments on this. When we come back, I'll have Bradley Byrne in front of me. We're in the studio today. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. This is Cam Marston. Poor communication is costing your business, and it's because many leaders don't have the skills to communicate well. Productivity's sinking, and you're losing sales. Teams are frustrated. So I created the Generational Insights Communications Academy to train leaders to communicate effectively with anyone in any situation. Fix communication breakdowns, build the company you deserve. Enroll your leaders today at cammarston.com/GICA. We're back. You're listening to What's Working. I'm Cam Marston. Thanks again for joining us. Sitting across from me in the office today is Bradley Byrne, former Congressman representing Alabama's 1st Congressional District between 2014 and 2021. He was in the Alabama State Senate from 2003 to 2007. His Wikipedia page is 19 pages long, I'll let you know, so I've only touched a small bit of it. Bradley, thank you very much for your time. Welcome to What's Working.
It's great to be with you, Cam.
I'm glad you're here. Let's kind of take a pulse, a temperature set on the nation right now, and there's a number of things going on that I'm eager to get into. First, we're in the 36th day of the government shutdown. Second, last night were a number of elections across the nation, some of which may spell something for the future. The ones that I'm looking at most notably right now, Virginia's governor, a Democrat, won last night. Democrat out of New Jersey, governor, won last night. I'm not so sure how significant that is in New Jersey. There were two big Democrat wins in Virginia last night. The Democrat House of Delegates in Virginia expanded its majority. And perhaps most notably, in New York City, an acknowledged socialist won. And New York is now in the hands of a socialist. Bradley, what does all this mean?
Well, different parts of that mean different things. So You can't amalgamate all that together and make it mean one thing. So the shutdown is a total failure of the federal government. The easiest bill to pass in the United States Congress is a clean continuing resolution. It's 2 pages long. You're simply continuing the funding of the government based on the prior funding bill. And they can't pass that. And they tried in the Senate now 16, 17 times. Now, there's some happy talk coming out of the Senate that they're beginning to make some movement, and I hope that's true. But all that means is that they would agree to continue to fund the government at the same level that it's been funded today. And that literally is going back to a Biden budget. That's how crazy this is. So they're going to have to extend it beyond what the House did, which was right before Thanksgiving, because they can't get it done between now and Thanksgiving. And I'm hearing that they're going to extend it out to sometime in January, because there are a lot of Republicans that don't like being jammed by getting something right before Christmas. Mm-hmm. I was one of those Republicans that didn't like that, by the way. You get a big omnibus spending bill. You don't half know what's in it because you get it 2 or 3 days before you vote on it. It's a terrible way to do business. So I'm hoping that they do push it out until January and that there's real, honest to God, substantive work done on that budget. On the elections, you would expect the Democrats to win a governor's election in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Typically in Virginia, the party out of power wins that gubernatorial election the year after a presidential election. That doesn't surprise me very much. The fact that the Democratic nominee for Attorney General, who said some really awful things, won, just goes to show that there was a lot of straight Democratic voting in Virginia, which is disappointing because I would hope that more discerning Democrats would not support somebody like that. I think the most telling thing from yesterday is the mayor's race in New York.
Yeah,
that just
caught
amazing.
A lot of people off guard that it even had traction, much less that he won.
Well, what that shows you is that, and I can say this on the other side of the Republican Party, but if you look at what's happening to the Democratic Party, the socialists are where the magnet is. That's pulling even people who aren't necessarily socialists themselves over in that direction, and that is troubling to me. It's just as troubling, by the way, to me that we've got a magnet over on the other side, pulling people to the populist side over on the Republican Party. So that's part of what's happening in Washington. You get people pulled to these polls, and then you don't have the ability to work across those polls to get to the sort of compromises you have to reach to move serious pieces of legislation like an appropriations bill. I'll give you another bellwether bill. It's the National Defense Authorization Act that we pass every year since John Kennedy. It comes out of a very bipartisan committee, the House Armed Services Committee that I served on. That committee deliberately works in a bipartisan fashion. They start working in a bipartisan fashion, and they end in a bipartisan way. It's one of the few places left where you see that in Washington. And I'm worried that it may even begin to infect that committee and that very important piece of legislation. So this pulling to the polls is a dangerous thing for America, because the last time we pulled to the polls, we ended up in a civil war.
What does that mean for the center? As I told you before the microphones were on, that I am the leftmost Republican and the rightmost Democrat you'll ever meet. I feel like I have no voice in the center. And this pulling to the polls as you to the extremes is very clearly what's going on out there. There are many people like me who don't feel that they have a voice. What does it mean for someone like me? Am I just supposed to hope and wait that somebody reasonable shows up?
Well, there are reasonable people in Washington on both sides. I know them. I've worked with them. There's some people in Washington on the Democratic side who are true liberals, not socialists, okay?
Yeah.
True liberals. And I have worked with them. And I've worked with them in a friendly fashion. It wasn't like we were fighting one another as we worked together. So there's a way to be a true conservative and a way to be a true liberal and still find ways to work across that divide. It's when you break free from that and you go to the polls that people lock down and say, I will not compromise.
Mm-hmm.
Compromise is at the heart of the American system. We got our Constitution through a compromise. I mean, a compromise that took 4 months. And if you read the history of the Constitutional Convention, you see over and over again the delegates of that convention had to reach across big divides, north-south, rural city, the western parts of the states versus the eastern part of the states, merchants versus farmers, slave owners versus non-slave owners. Just a series of compromises. And if you look at the development of the country in the early 19th century and going more towards the middle part of the century, there were compromises to make this country grow. There's nothing wrong with compromise. You don't have to give up your principles to compromise. But if you really believe in this country and want to see it go forward, you have to learn how to reach across that divide and work together to make things happen.
Are there people there that want to? Are there people in D.C.? It doesn't appear that there are. You have insider knowledge from your time there. You say there are people that want to make it work.
Oh, yes, and I talk to them. I've talked to them in the last several weeks.
Many of them, perhaps, let me make conjecture here, are retiring.
Yes.
I can't get this done.
Yes.
I try to compromise. I try to find middle ground. The people on either side, the polarized people, belittle me, berate me, threaten my family. For trying to find compromise. And those people are, perhaps, you could hardly blame them, saying this place isn't for me anymore. What are we doing to keep these moderate people safe?
Well, we have 31 people so far who've announced that they're not running for re-election in the House. My guess is over the next couple of months, that number's going to grow that's a record in the last 20 years.
Do you feel that those 31 will be replaced by polarized people? The tone of the nation right now, it seems to me, is that the polarized candidates will win. The extremes will win.
I think that's likely going to be what happens, is that we will see more extreme candidates nominated from both parties, and people who get nominated by saying, I will not compromise with the other side. And the voters in the primaries like that.
Yeah.
When I was first elected in a special election in 2013, I told people, look, I'm conservative, but I'm not a show horse. I'm a workhorse. I'm here to get things done. And people liked that in 2013. I wonder if they would like that in 2025.
So your message today of I'm here to work and compromise and get things done would probably fall on deaf ears or even angry ears.
I'm afraid it would, yes.
What is the future then?
Well, at some point, America's going to get to the point where everybody realizes this is not working. And it's my hope that that will move, particularly primary voters in both parties, to the point where they'll say, once again, I want a workhorse, not a show horse.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you watch, and either side, I'm not picking a side here when I say this, if you watch the people on TV, the people who gravitate to the cameras, they simply are trying to get attention. They're not trying to get things done.
Mm-hmm.
I won't call out any names, but you can tell when they talk, they're just trying to speak to some constituency out there and not to the people that they're supposed to be working with. I won't name this congressman's name, but I remember one time when I was still in Congress, there was a particular congressman who was one of the TV people.
Yeah.
And he was standing next to me, wait to vote. And I looked at him and I said, do you ever take your makeup off? And he said, no, I never take my makeup off because when the television is ready for me to be on, I'm ready to go on.
He was there for the glam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people like me were not there for the glam.
Yeah.
We were there because we honestly wanted to get things done. And I'm saying this again, there were Democrats and Republicans like that. And I had Democrats that I strongly disagreed with.
Yeah.
But I was able to work with them.
So your prediction is it's going to take a crisis for people to want people that will work with one another.
Yeah, for the American people to see this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
Because it's not working.
Well, it isn't working. I'm glad to hear you say that. And if I understood you correctly, I think maybe you and I talked about this as you and I were on the phone about this podcast. You don't think you could get elected today on your former platform?
I do not think I could get elected today.
So a candidate that needs to get elected from either parties right now has to be extreme.
To win a primary, yes.
To win a primary. Again, going back to what I said a moment ago, opening up the middle for somebody like me to vote for, opening up a candidate that represents the middle. And we could call them the lampshade candidate. We could call them the get something done candidate. History in our nation shows that a third-party candidate seldom works. Everybody has said throughout history, but it's different this time as they launch a third-party candidate. I can't help but wonder if it is different this time.
Well, first of all, let me describe what I mean by extreme. It's not so much your position, substantive positions, it's how you work on it, it's how you deal with it. I may have a very strong conservative position on an issue, but I'm not so extreme that I can't reach across the aisle and find a way to work together with somebody who disagrees with me.
Yeah.
That's what we're missing.
That's correct.
So on the third party part, I just am very doubtful that a third-party candidate will work in America.
Why? And you're not the first person that said that. You're the 10th person that said that. Why?
Well, if you add the people who vote in primaries together, they're far more numerous than the people who don't vote in primaries. If you vote in a primary, you're very likely to be a highly partisan person, okay? There are very few non-highly partisan people who vote in primaries. Now, there are lots of people that vote in general elections who aren't, but they don't overwhelm the other two. So we've got to get to the point where people who vote in primaries understand they need to be electing people who are going to be workhorses, who are not going to be the show horses. But the show horses right now are getting all the attention. And to some extent, I blame the news media. I mean, that's who they go to.
They go for the polarizing comments. Let's go talk to Congressman so-and-so. He or she is bound to say something crazy and that really works well on the TV.
That's right.
Or on the social media, whatever it is.
I mean, I can tell you there was a time that I was interviewed by a reporter who I actually had a lot of respect for from CNN. She interviewed me and a Democrat to talk about something. And she said, "This is great. I love this you two working together, et cetera." And I waited, it never aired. And I happened to see her in the hallways of Congress. And I said, "What happened? I mean, you love the story. You got some great footage." She said, whoever was in charge killed it.
It's not good TV.
Not good TV.
My wife and I tease each other. No one would ever want to do a documentary on our family because we generally get along and do what we're supposed to. It doesn't make good TV.
No.
Yeah.
And getting along in Congress doesn't make good TV.
So it will take a crisis to get people to want to vote for a Republican or a Democrat who wants to, use your term, become a workhorse. Is there not a way, and I continue to go back to this, forgive me, is there not a way that a third-party candidate may pull these extreme people to the middle?
If you're extreme, I don't think anybody's going to pull you.
That's a good point.
I think you are who you are. And if you're a workhorse, you are who you are.
Yeah.
Like I can't become extreme. I am who I am when it comes to working with people. I think the voters have got to send a message. We want people who are going to work together.
And none of the elections yesterday are that message.
I don't get that message from yesterday.
I don't get that message from yesterday either. It's the media that I've looked at calls it a resounding thumping of the right side. However, that's not exactly what leaps out to me.
No.
It was nearly entirely predictable from what you just told me of each of these elections.
The only thing that surprised me yesterday was that the Democratic nominee in Virginia for Attorney General, who said all those awful things, that he actually was able to pull it out. But that shows you how partisan the Democratic voters were in Virginia.
So you currently sit as the president and CEO of the Mobile Chamber.
Right.
Let's talk about New York City, their election of the socialist candidate, and how that may impact the business community in New York City, and whether you're seeing any sort of impact here in Mobile on the business community based on the politics of Washington. Does that question make sense?
It does.
So tell me what you're seeing in Mobile locally. Are politics influencing business?
Well, the political decisions influence business. So, for example, the tariffs influence business because if you're dependent upon something you've got to import from another country, a tariff increases the cost of the goods that you have to work with. And I've got examples of that right here in Mobile. We're a port city. Anytime a tariff depresses trade, it depresses how much we're going to get into our port. Now, so far, we haven't seen a significant impact on our port, thank God. But the political decisions are having an impact. And I'm beginning to hear from certain industries that they're having a problem with their labor force because they're dependent upon immigrants. And so there is that impact. On the other hand, there are also positive impacts. I've talked to some banks that have said that some of the regulatory positions of the Trump administration have been very helpful to them.
Yeah.
And passing the Great Big Beautiful Bill provides all sorts of tax benefits to businesses. So, there's good and bad, and you just have to learn how to work with that if you're a business.
The reason where I was going with the question is, if there is a significant economic impact locally, might that lead to a cry for a candidate who's willing to work versus willing to stake his or her position on the polar sides of the spectrum and not yield?
Well, we've been fortunate in Mobile in that mainly we've been represented in Washington and Montgomery by people who are workhorses.
Yeah.
And so my predecessor, Joe Bonner, who I think you've had on before.
He's coming on either later this week or next.
I mean, Joe was a workhorse.
Yeah.
His predecessor, Sonny Callahan, was a workhorse. His predecessor, Jack Edwards, was a workhorse. My successor, Jerry Carl, was a workhorse. So we've been blessed in this area by having people who get it.
Yeah.
At the state and local level and federal level. So we haven't felt what it would feel like if we had somebody who just was out there to get on TV. On the other hand, what I hear from companies that are looking at coming here is that they love this whole attitude in Mobile where everybody works together. I hear that over and over again because they don't experience it in a lot of places.
Give me a comparison. Where else might these companies be looking that they don't get along?
Well, companies that are presently in the Midwest and particularly the Northeast, they do not experience Democrats and Republicans working together in local legislative delegations or in the congressional delegations. When we worked back when I was in Congress to continue to make sure that we were funding appropriately the Navy's shipbuilding program that was so important to Austell, I could always count on Terry Sewell, who at that time was the lone Democrat in the Alabama congressional delegation. I could always depend upon Terry, always, 100%. And she could always depend upon me. And I think what these companies see is Democrats and Republicans work together. Federal and state and local work together. Private sector, public sector works together. Business loves that. That's what business thrives on. And we offer that to them in the Mobile area. And that's why we're having such great success with expanding industry and new industry coming here.
And do you think, is there any threat to that on the horizon right now?
Not that I see.
Yeah.
We had a mayor's election here in Mobile, sworn a new mayor the other day. And the mayor and each of the city council members got up and gave, a little speech after they were sworn in. And everybody said the same thing. We are going to work together.
Yeah.
And I went away from that as the president of the chamber thinking I couldn't have scripted that. Because if you're working together, what you're telling a company that's looking at coming in this area is that we're going to work together to help you be successful. And that's what they want to hear.
So it sounds to me like, and this is the way I think about it, the stench that I'm talking about is purely out of Washington and specifically out of, is it right to say it's all out of the White House?
No, I don't think it's all out of the White House. I think there's a lot of stuff coming out of the House and the Senate right now. I mean, the Senate, which used to be able to work together on these funding bills, basically locked down before they got started. And here's what happened. The Democrats reached an agreement in the Senate with the Republicans last spring on a funding bill, and their base rose up against them. And so they felt like they had to fight this time or they get primaried. And so you had a failure to communicate, literally not even talking to one another from the get-go. So I don't blame the White House for that. I think this is really a breakdown in the United States Senate. But there are breakdowns in the House, and there are breakdowns. Sometimes the White House has to reverse course because they leap out there on something, and then when they get the reaction, they realize, no, maybe we shouldn't have done that. Washington needs to stop and think before they act. Don't just react to something. Stop and think about it first, because there are some big-time real-world repercussions for what they're doing. What I tell people all the time, people will come up to me from time to time and say, well, why don't you run again?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I left the place where nothing was going right and came to the place where everything was going right. Why would I do that?
Why would I willfully go back there?
That's almost like the definition of insanity.
That's right.
So I have no intention of ever running for anything again. And almost certainly at my age, closing out my career working on this very important stuff that we've got going on in economic development in Mobile. But our success, once again, is because we work together.
Yeah.
And I have nothing but praise for the Democrat members of the legislature, the state legislature from this area. They've been wonderful to work with.
Yeah. So if you could get an audience, let's imagine a hypothetical situation. You could get an audience with voters across the state who are really curious and interested and said, Bradley, what do we need to do to feel like we're represented? Let's talk about me. You have an audience of middle of the road voters across the state who feel hopeless right now and don't feel like there's representation of my voice. What are you going to tell that large group of people right now? I don't know how large they are, by the way. I just assume I'm not the only one.
No, you're not the only one. Trust me. There are people, Democrats and Republicans, who feel that way. What I tell people, whether it's at the state level or the federal level, is that when it comes to politics, there are two types of people. They're players or they're victims. You got to choose. What do you want to be, a player or a victim?
Interesting. Well, you're going to expand on that. What does that mean?
Well, nice people tend to, and a lot of these people I'm talking about, they're nice people, right? And when they look at politics, they say, "Oh, I don't want any part of that." Now, I'm not asking them to run for office, but they got to be involved, because if they're not players, if they're not playing in the game, they're going to be victims. So if people that feel the way you do don't get involved in helping the good candidates run, helping them spread their word, if you've got the financial resources, providing the financial resources, then you're going to be a victim, because we're going to get these people who play to the camera. On the other hand, if we are supporting people who get it, who understand that whatever your principles are, you've got to be able to work with people that differ with you, and we expect you to be a workhorse, not a show horse. If enough people get behind those candidates, the way our system works is they'll win.
Do you think the acrimony that exists right now are keeping players away?
Yes, I do.
And is it just asking them, hey, player, get involved? You don't have to run for office, but we sure would like you shaking the can for this guy or this girl, or ringing the bell for this can or this girl.
I watched the mayor's race in Mobile, and I couldn't get involved. We could not take a position as a chamber, but I was watching from the outside. And there were a lot of people, nice people, good people, who really got involved, who really, worked the polls, put signs out, did the sort of stuff, the blocking and tackling that tend to win races. And I'm not talking about one side or the other. I'm just saying, was observing some good people get involved. Good people have to get involved in politics for good things to happen.
What does that look like? Let's get tactical. There's a player out there somewhere who's listening to this podcast, who says the stench of politics right now, I would not want to go near it. However, your message right now is, hey, you're a good person. You need to be the player. And in order to be the player and contribute, you need to do this.
Okay.
Fill in the blank.
To the extent you've got financial resources to give to a candidate, do that. If you don't have financial resources, or if you do, there are other things that can be done. You can call people. You've got a network. You can email them, text them. You'd be surprised at how effective person to person, where there's a relationship, text messages can be in a political campaign.
And they're easy.
And they're real easy. And everybody's got a network. Everybody's got a network. And if you work that network, and other people who know you and have trust and confidence in you see what you're doing, it's infectious. It's very infectious. And you can see good people to good people beginning to have a ripple effect across the campaign. Also, it's as simple as putting a sign in your front yard. A sign in your front yard, as opposed to on a meeting or somewhere, a sign says that person thinks enough of that candidate that he or she let them put a sign in their yard.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like a little thing. It is not. And then finally, it's that sort of day of. I am surprised at how many people will get to or close to an election day and say, is there an election tomorrow?
Yes, it's shocking.
It truly is shocking. And it's just that one thing. Don't forget to vote. My general election, when I ran in the special election in 2013, was on December the 17th. You know who's paying attention to politics on December the 17th? Nobody.
Nearly nobody.
Nobody.
Yeah.
So we literally got big signs made up that we put all over the place that said, "Merry Christmas, please don't forget to vote tomorrow."
Yeah.
That's don't not vote for me.
Right.
Just please go out and vote. And even with that, we had a terrible turnout. And that's the other thing. Turnout, I mean, my gosh, turnout in these elections is minuscule.
Yeah.
I mean, the good people are staying home.
That bothers me as well. They say the stench of politics is so bad, I don't want to be involved with it, so I'm not even going to vote. But I do feel, they say, entitled to complain. And that's been one of the old adages for years. If you don't vote, you can't complain.
Yeah. I hear complaining from people that don't vote. And I say, look, from our political system's point of view, you don't exist.
Yeah.
Because you didn't vote. So just getting out to vote is a big deal. I spent more money in my campaign in 2013 on getting out to vote than I spent on television.
Really?
And the turnout during my primary was 7%, and then my runoff was 14%.
Yeah.
And we were delighted with 14%.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
There are people in other countries that will wait hours to cast their vote, and we just walk right past it.
It's so easy to vote here. It's so easy to vote.
Mamdani in New York City, the socialist, got a big boost from the youth of New York City.
Yeah.
In fact, what I read this morning is there were people who had no stake in the game, had no vote in the game, coming from states miles around to support and celebrate. They couldn't vote, but celebrate the man and what he had done. Obama had a remarkable success galvanizing the youth towards him in his campaign. Mm-hmm. How important is the youth in a candidate's campaign? And what would you advise a candidate today to say, all right, listen, that under 35-year-old voter out there, they're important. How would you go about attracting their attention today?
Well, in some respects, the way you reach the younger voter is how you reach them, because they don't get their news, they don't get their information the same way a 70-year-old does.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, 70-year-olds are more likely to vote than 25-year-olds. So a lot of times in campaigns, we focus on the 70-year-olds because we know they're going to vote, right? But I think it's important to attract the youth vote. We always made a significant effort at that. It wasn't just the message, it's how you reach out to them. What's the means by which you communicate with them? In my experience, young people have, in general, the same sort of desires as older people. They're just at a different stage in their life, and they've got more anxieties about it. When you're 70, there's nothing left to have anxieties about unless you've got a health problem. When you're 25, you're just starting out in life, you're worried about economics, et cetera. Now, one problem we have with young people is some of them don't know economics very well, and they don't understand this is the effect of this sort of government activity, what it would mean to the economy. But they learn. I mean, my generation, the boomer generation, we started out at, not me personally, but a lot of us started out as sort of left-wing hippie types.
Right.
And then we got jobs.
Yeah.
And guess what? We lost the left-wing hippie type stuff because we started paying taxes. We started paying more attention to all that sort of stuff. So some people get cynical about the youth vote. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm really not at all. I think that the young people in this country are going to continue on with what has been done before. And our new mayor in Mobile is in his early 40s.
Yeah.
And I rejoice at having somebody at that age who's running this city because I think it's their turn. And people like me are in our 70s, it's not our turn. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. One of the things that I remember from the Obama campaign is they felt that if they could get these quote unquote young people, let's just say 35 years old and younger, to donate $5 through an app of some sort like that small amount still galvanized them to support and to show up on the day. They had some financial skin in the game, even a small amount.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And don't forget, President Trump did pretty well with young people last fall.
He did do very well with young people last fall.
So this is not left versus right. This is, are you appealing in the right way to the stuff that they care about?
One of the things we've seen recently is one of the things that Governor Keating said to me on the phone is that on our Zoom call when I interviewed him for the podcast that is posted. Anyway, one of the challenges, he said, is quality candidates. He said when he was coming up, it was an obligation of people like him to give back after his work career was over, to give back to the community and the state and the city by some sort of political activity. And he chose a big one. He chose to run for governor as well as other things prior to that. Do you feel, what do we need to do to get these quality candidates to step up? One of the things that you said earlier is when we find one, we need to champion them, support them. Well, how do we find them? Right now we see, and you can hear the cynicism in my voice. I'm sorry for that, but I have a hard time disguising it. You can see these candidates whose background is quite frankly dubious in their qualifications to run for office. We have one today that's running for office that registered to vote, 10 days before he declared his candidacy. And what do we need to do to find quality candidates to step out and run?
Well, first and foremost, when somebody pokes their head up that's quality, we've got to support them in a big way. And I'll give you another example of something. We just had an exemplary mayor here in Mobile, Sandy Stimson, who retired. And the outpouring of love and support for him and appreciation for what he did to hold that position, that's a message to other people in the community that would be thinking about running. Hey, look how much they appreciated Sandy.
It's a good point. He was cherished.
Oh, yeah. And I got to tell you, and I tell people this a lot, I still have people that will stop me in the grocery store and thank me for running, for holding office.
Yeah.
So there are people out there, and it's a little thing, it's a small thing. You see some guy over there that you voted for, maybe you don't know him very well. You go up to him and just say, I really appreciate the fact that you were willing to do that.
Mm-hmm.
That means all the world to people. So we need to appreciate the good people after the fact. What I worry about is that the good people won't poke their heads up and say, I'm running. And we've got to do a better job of attracting the Governor Keatings of the world to be willing to do it. And I think that's another reason why the good people have to be players in the whole political game, start to finish.
So you said we've got to do a good job. What does that job include?
I think that those of us who believe in America and its principles need to speak out and say, I'm looking for somebody who shares my views, because they're out there. There are plenty of them out there. There are plenty of quality people out there. But right now, I'm afraid that too many of those quality people are crouched in the corner saying, I don't want anything to do with that.
Yeah. I had Kyle Sweetser here a couple of weeks ago. He's running for Senate. Are you familiar with him?
No.
He's running for Senate. He's trying to take Tuberville's place once he moves into running for governor or leaves the Senate seat to run for governor. He's a former Republican, now a Democrat, said his Republican views, the views he had as a Republican are no longer reflected in the current Republican Party, and he's moved to Democrat. But the point is, he's had death threats. His wife and children have had death threats for running for public office. Find me a good person out there, to use your term, who's willing to have death threats for themselves and their family in order to run for office. That's a tall task. That's a high ask.
Well, some of my former colleagues who've left told me they left because they were worried about their families.
Yeah.
I had death threats. I was shocked when I had them because I wasn't used to that.
Yeah.
And you do worry about your family. I can't go into it. I won't go into the details of what we had to do to make sure that my home was secure.
Mm-hmm.
But we went through some significant efforts to secure my home and had some people that actually posed a threat to my home, So, yeah, I understand that. But what I tell people all the time is, and we send these young men and women out in harm's way all the time as soldiers or police officers. And they're willing to put their lives on the line because they believe in what they're doing. We need people who have the same sort of commitment to stand up and say, okay, I'm going to make all the right precautions so that I'm not going to put myself out there in a way that's seriously threatening to me or my family. But we've got to stand up. We've got to fight back.
Yeah. Do you feel, as a former candidate, a former elected official, there are protections in place that satisfactorily made you feel safe?
Yes.
Doing what you did.
Yes. So you will remember in 2017 that Representative Steve Scalise from Louisiana was shot on a baseball field.
That's right.
So that caused everybody to start paying a little bit more attention. And so the Capitol Police came and met with all of us and said, you need to go back home and meet with your staff, meet with your local law enforcement officials, and come up with a plan. And so we did. So my plan not only included my home, but it included everywhere I was. So if I had a town hall meeting or I was speaking to a civic club, local law enforcement knew exactly where I was.
Mm-hmm.
And in most cases, I had somebody there with me, a police officer, badge and all that. We had very few problems once we started doing that. Unfortunately, one of the death threats on me occurred while I was flying to Washington. There was somebody on the plane with me who literally posted a threat to my life.
On the plane with you on it while in the air?
Yes.
That's scary.
We landed in Atlanta. I had to change planes. I went up to the Delta Club to get something to eat because I had the time to do that. And I walked out, and the person running this Delta Club said, "Is there a Bradley Byrne here?" So I walked up and said, "I'm Bradley Byrne." And there was an Atlanta police officer standing next to me. He says, "Do you have any security?" I said, "No." He says, "You have no security?" I said, "No, sir, you are my security."
You're now it.
And he said, "We have a credible threat on your life, and it's somebody that was on the plane with you, and they're in the terminal." And he didn't know what to do. He never dealt with that before. And I said, "I tell you what, let's do. Let's put me on the plane, and you stand at the entrance of the plane and make sure nobody gets on that plane that doesn't have a ticket."
Yeah.
He said, "Good idea." So we did that, and I got out on the ground in Washington, and the way we always handled is when I got on the ground, my chief of staff would pick me up, and we go over the week's agenda on the way in. And I said, "What the heck?" Because I didn't know any of the details. And he said there was somebody on that plane that went on her Facebook site and threatened to kill you. And one of her followers on Facebook saw it and reported it. And that person had a very unpleasant visit from the FBI that day.
Yeah.
I don't believe that she meant it. I really don't. To this day, I don't believe that she meant it. But the fact that she felt free to do that, we are far too tolerant of violence in society in general. But the fact that she felt free to put that on a social media is shocking.
Yeah. Yeah.
We all of us have got to turn that temperature down.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on how to turn that temperature down. We talked a little bit about the media. They gravitate towards these polarizing things. How can we tell CNN or whomever it is, Fox News, CNN, MS, whatever it is, to go to them and say, "Listen, when you find these crazy people, don't broadcast them. They're going to look at you and say, 'We sell ads.'"
Yeah, they are going to tell me that and have told me that. Well, I think each one of us in our own way can do that by what we do on social media. I mean, I find that people are far too willing to put things on social media they would never say to my face.
Yeah.
Never say to my face. And there have been a couple of times where I heard somebody put something on social media about me, and I called them. I said, "What is this?"
Right.
And they were embarrassed, 100% of the time embarrassed, because they got, happy fingers, got a thought in their head, got a feeling going, and they put it on social media. And when they were, confronted about it, they realized that what they had done was wrong. Well, we need to all think about that. Be careful what you say.
So what we were talking about good people running for office a moment ago.
Yeah.
Is the message that we can say from you as with firsthand experience is you may feel is the message you're going to get protected. You're going to get some pushback. You're going to get some blowback. You're going to get some threats from people out there. But you can say firsthand, there are people out there willing to protect you. If you're a good person with a moderate sensibility and want to run for office, there are people and organizations and structures out there who will protect you.
Yes.
So if your fear is threats, it's reasonable to have those fears, but there will be things done to prevent that from happening.
Well, I would say to anybody running for political office, go to your local law enforcement. Tell them that you're running. Get them to advise you what they want you to do to make sure they can do their job to protect you.
Yeah.
And they've got protocols in place. They'll tell you, do this, do that. And if you're going to be in a public place, let us know.
Mm-hmm.
Just having somebody there with a badge and a gun makes a lot of difference.
Yeah. It's amazing that that's what we have to talk about, but that's kind of the way the world is today.
Well, my grandfather was the sheriff of Mobile back in the 1920s, and he ran against a corrupt group that was known as the Ring. And during the campaign, he got word that the Ring intended to abduct my father, who was a young man, a little boy. And so my grandmother sat out on the front porch of our home on Osho Road to watch my father as he played out in the front yard with a loaded Colt 45 pistol.
Oh, my gosh.
You didn't know my grandmother. She'd have used it. I'm telling you.
I'm giggling about this. It sounds like such a quaint story right now looking back, but it's as terrifying as what we're talking about right now, today.
The poll watchers, when my grandfather ran, I think that was 26, wore pistols.
Yeah.
The law enforcement that went to pick up the ballots, one of the first times they ever were able to use machine guns. I mean, this is not a new thing. It's flared up again recently, but this is not a new thing. We've had violence in American politics in the past.
Could it be that the time that I'm referring to, these halcyon days that I'm thinking about in the past, were actually the abnormal ones? The normal ones are the times of threat and violence.
No, I think the times of threat and violence usually coincide with a period in American life when there are heightened tensions.
Yeah.
Like when Abraham Lincoln was shot. And, you know, America was going through a lot of tough stuff in the 60s when John Kennedy was shot and his brother Robert was shot, and Martin Luther King was shot. And then that period of tension lowered, and we went through a considerable period of time when we didn't have all of this. Well, now we've got people, because tensions are so very high, we've got people, you know, shot at President Trump.
Yeah.
Killed Charlie Kirk. Have shot judges. So I think we in America, each one of us individually, have an obligation to lower the temperature.
Let's talk about what is the source of the tensions. I want your opinion of it. Where are these tensions coming from? I couldn't agree with you more. And I was actually I was a guest on someone else's podcast yesterday and talked about those tensions. Where do you think they're coming from? What's the source?
I think it's the news media.
You think it's entirely the news media?
Well, I shouldn't say entirely. That's too strong. But can we just turn on a news show? Look at the tone of voice. Listen to the words that they use. I mean, I don't watch it anymore because I don't find it useful or helpful. But they're deliberately doing that because you get more clicks if you're online. You get more eyeballs if you're broadcasting. And they want the clicks and the eyeballs because, as you said earlier, that's how they sell ads.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I gave you that experience that I had with CNN. I don't want to pick on CNN. There are others that are like that too. But I think the news media is basically telling people it's okay to act like this. And so people act like that. And then when we elect people that do that, I mean, good Lord. I mean, it's even affirmative, even worse.
Yeah. It's a tornado. It keeps spinning around itself and getting more violent.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're far too tolerant of violence in America, far too tolerant. I got to know a writer, a professor from Harvard when I was in Congress named Robert Putnam.
Oh my gosh, Bowling Alone?
Yeah, people need to read Bowling Alone.
And they need to watch the follow-up documentary. Have you seen that one?
No, I have not.
Oh my Lord, it's good. I'll send you the link to it. I'll put it in this podcast.
So we're growing apart because we're not together.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be, and I'm not trying to tell people that they're bad because they're not going to church on Sunday. It used to be we all went to church on Sunday, right? Mm-hmm. And at least we saw one another on Sunday.
It was community.
It was community. It used to be that people belonged to civic clubs. People belonged to bowling clubs.
Yes.
The fact that you're together with other people makes you more tolerant, makes you want to listen and get to know somebody better. If I know you personally, I'm not going to say terrible things about you, even if I disagree with you.
Right.
Because I know you personally. And so I think it's that lack of community, it's that lack of being together that's caused us to think, well, it's okay. I'm sitting here by myself online. I can type up anything I want to say, particularly if I've got some talking head on TV that's using the same language.
That's inflaming me.
Yeah. I tell people all the time, to me, politics is not personal. It's just not. Personal is something far more important. And I would never jeopardize my personal relationship with somebody because of their position on a political issue. It's just not that important.
I agree with you. You mentioned the inflaming rhetoric out of the media right now, but also a part of the tension comes from the loneliness.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
So you're talking to good people now. I know the people that listen to this podcast, they're above average in intelligence and generosity and everything else. How do we solve that? How do we get people to join bowling clubs? And I don't know that those even exist anymore. But what could you as the leader of the chamber do to pull people together that you're not doing now? I mean, what could I, as just a normal guy in town, do to pull people together so that these conversations happen? What is the opportunity for us?
We all have social networks. We need, and I'm talking to myself now when I say this, we need to, A, treasure our social networks, understand how important they are. And there's plenty of literature out there that says one of the biggest threats to people as they age is being lonely.
It's equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Yeah. And then secondly, don't just treasure it, work at keeping that together. So I have found myself, after I retired from Congress, really yearning for the camaraderie of people that have been friends of mine for decades. And I've enjoyed making new friends. And I found that every time I do something like that, even if it's just having lunch or just sitting together and talking, I come away feeling better.
Feeling better. It's amazing.
Yeah.
You're in my office, my studio right now. I spend a lot of time alone in here, and I realize I need to go out and have lunch with somebody, and the rest of the day is so much better after that exchange.
There's that great point early in Genesis when God's made Adam, and he looks down there and it's only Adam.
Yeah.
And he says, it's not good for man to be alone.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty profound.
It is profound, and it's dead on, man. Your brain takes over in a bad way the longer you're alone.
Well, you get sucked into yourself, and the worst thing to do is to be sucked into yourself.
Yeah.
And we're not meant to be like that either. So I'm constantly hoping that somebody's going to pull me as I pull them into these relationships, because I realize as I'm aging that those relationships are the most important thing you got.
Back in the day, I had not yet returned to Mobile. My mother told me about a citywide effort to read a common book.
Yeah.
It was a Rick Bragg book, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I think I remember that, yeah.
All over but the shouting.
Yeah.
And they had community events, if I recall correctly. Somebody listening to this will remember this. They had community events where people would get together to talk about the book. And it wasn't as if a major decision needed to come out of the book. It was, let's share this experience of reading this. And it was a wonderful book.
Yeah.
Is there opportunity to do that? Is your read of society today, does it say this would work anymore?
I think it would. And in fact, I think there's going to be an effort next year, because it's the 250th birthday of America, to get people in this area to read a really cool book called The 14th Colony, because Mobile was part of British West Florida during that time, and we were the 14th colony. It talks about how we were given an opportunity to join with the other 13 colonies to rebel against England, chose not to.
Chose not to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only to have the Spanish come over from New Orleans and lay siege to Fort Charlotte and ultimately take over from the British here. But we have a group that's working on trying to have a bunch of activities for the 250th birthday of America. I hope we do that, because I think people need to know that story. And it's not a long book. It's written by a guy named Mike Byrne, who runs Blakely State Park. Really fascinating guy. So I think there's going to be an effort to do that. I think the whole opportunity of the 250th birthday of America to talk about who are we, what are our principles, how did we get here? That's an enormous opportunity for us to reconnect, to tell our story. For some people, it's going to be hearing our story for the first time. There's a group of us that get together in the mountains of North Carolina for 4th of July week every year. And we have a communal reading of the Declaration. We break it up into 6 parts and get children, And when you have that sort of common opportunity to read the Declaration together, all of a sudden, it all becomes a lot clearer to you. And you're doing it with other people.
That's wonderful. That seems like a powerful moment. If you do it every year, it becomes a part of a tradition. And suddenly the incentive for why we're here and what we've done becomes clear again.
Yes. Now, don't get me wrong. As soon as we get finished and it's meaningful to us, we have a picnic.
We move on.
Yeah, but you're reminded, and you're reminded of the sacrifice that people made to not only put out the Declaration, but to fight against the most powerful country in the world to make it real.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the most powerful stories out of that time is, the British come into New York and chased Washington and the Continental Army out of New York through New Jersey into Pennsylvania. And right before the end of the year, George Washington decides to make this daring attack across the Delaware River against the Hessian troops there in Trenton. And it works. And all of a sudden, the fortunes of the war switch around. It's like we're indomitable as long as we stick together.
Mm-hmm.
Washington knew, as long as I keep this Continental Army together, as long as the Congress is together, and the Congress had plenty of problems back then, don't worry. He knew that we would win. If we just stuck to it, we would win, and we did.
Yeah.
And so let's use next year, the 250th anniversary of our country, to renew our understanding of one another, and that those words at the end of the Declaration, we mutually pledge to one another our lives, our fortune, our sacred honor.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Very powerful stuff, and I feel is lost today or overlooked.
Well, let's use next year to reclaim it.
Final comments, Bradley. You've been very helpful, very insightful. This podcast used to be focused exclusively on workplace, workforce, marketplace trends. I've changed it in order to scratch an itch that I've had. What's going on out there? How do I get a voice in Washington? Because I don't feel like I have one. You and I have talked about that. What are your final comments, thoughts for people like me who are listening going, I don't feel like I have a voice either. Give me a sunshine of hope.
I use this story a lot. So you will remember that back at the end of the Bear Bryant area is when the players started dancing in the end zone.
Yes.
And Coach Bryant did not like that. And he told the players, if you find yourself in the end zone, act like you belong there.
Yes.
America's in the end zone every day. Let's act like we belong here.
Oh, what an interesting parallel.
Because everybody in the world wants to get here. They're literally dying to get into this country.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just because we have the wealth that we have. That's part of it. It's the fact they know that they'll be safe here, and they're not safe where they live now. They'll be free here. They won't be trampled upon by their government here. Generations to come before us to give us all this. My father's generation fought in World War II and fought desperate battles. Well, we've got it for free. Let's enjoy what we have. Let's appreciate one another, and let's pass it on.
Bradley Byrne, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Honored to be here.
We'll have some final comments after this break. You're listening to What's Working. Be right back. Hi, I'm Cam Marston. Many business leaders like you are facing declining sales, high turnover, low morale, all because of poor communication. That's why I created the Generational Insights Communications Academy. The Academy trains your leaders to communicate effectively with anyone in any situation, helping you build the thriving company you deserve. Learn more and enroll today at cammarston.com/GICA. That was great. Can't thank Bradley enough for giving so much of his time and his thoughts and his feedback and sharing his stories. If you're one of those good people out there and wondering if you should throw your name in the ring, your name in the hat, whatever the expression is, maybe you should have a conversation with somebody that's been there before and can tell you a little bit about what it's like and the protections that they were given, the challenges that they faced, and right now, the desperate need for good people to show up as candidates. I hope you'll consider it. Up next, we have Joe Bonner on the menu, I think, on the list of interviews to come. And I've got Christina McInnes coming. She's one of my favorites. She and I met at recording one of these podcasts, and her story is wonderful. We'll have more on that. You're listening to What's Working. We'll have another podcast for you in a week or so.